Hello, everyone's Price Focus. As Nottingham Forest were comfortably beaten by Fulham at the weekend, with games against Newcastle, Arsenal, and Manchester City to come. Nuno's got some big choices ahead of him this week. We'll discuss those and review the game at Craven Cottage in the company, first of all, of Pete Blackburn. Morning, Pete. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I just realised one of my headphones hasn't been working the entire time I've worn them, but other than that, I'm okay. Michael Temple, just about good morning, but we got there in the end. Thanks to you. How are you doing?
Sorry, fellas. Yeah, it's me holding up this morning, so I apologise to anybody that's been waiting. But yeah, feeling good despite Saturday's result.
Good to have you with us. Kick us off then, Temps. Just the general thoughts on the game, and we'll branch out from there.
Disappointed that we couldn't lay a glove on them first half. I think that set the tone for it, didn't it? Periods of being passive, lack of invention with the ball. And the headline being that whilst we've been so good at defending crosses this year, and there have been very few headed goals against Forest, that was our Achilles heel at the weekend, and Fulham took advantage of that. I think it was uncharacteristic. We were so buoyed having bounced back against Brighton and generally went to Fulham knowing that we could have got something done. And I think the tactical change that we made second half to go to a 4 and have Callum Hudson-Odoi there just made that instant impact, didn't it? And I just can't help but feel that plan A for Nuno is to get back to that formation with the back four, with the two wingers starting and firing, taking the game to the opposition, because we looked like a side transformed when that happened. But damage was done in the pattern of the game before that change was made. And it was only a bit of characteristic call from Chris Wood that kept us in it for as long as we were. So as soon as Callum Hudson-Odoi is ready to start, he must start. And we need him to recapture that form to fire us back to where we now probably all think we might hope to be when the shake-up occurs in May.
Yes, we should get to all that and branch out from there. One point on the game, Pete, that we haven't really discussed, just around crosses and headed goals. We shouldn't have been surprised, should we? Fulham crossed the ball. I think you said in the preview, Fulham crossed the ball a lot, and we just didn't seem to have an answer to it on Saturday, did we?
Yeah, it was a shame to see that. We did say in the preview that coming into the game, they had the most crosses of any team in the Premier League, I think, and also the most accurate crosses. So not only are they just shelling balls into the box, but they're doing it with quality. And we saw that, I guess, particularly with that Traore ball in, which was really quite impressive. Yeah, so it felt like that's something that we should have had a plan for on the day. It really didn't come out that way. It's hard to say sometimes, isn't it, where the balance lies between your inability to make an impact on those situations and them just doing things really well. I thought they were incredibly slick. I noticed that there's a Fulham podcast that I've listened to a couple of times when we've had games against them, and they seem like a sensible bunch. And post the game, they were saying that's the best they've played all season. And I did think they looked incredibly slick, but we were miles off it. Like Temp says, a real disappointing afternoon, really. And I guess the stats sort of tell the story of where we were and how far we were off it, because we created less than 0.5 xg. 2 shots on target? And I think the most damning ones, probably given how we play and what our strengths are, was the amount of shots they had. I think we allowed more shots against them than perhaps any other game this season. I haven't checked that out, but I suspect that might be right. And an awful lot of Matz Sels saves as well. So, yeah, bad day at the office, and a shame that we were undone by a sort of obvious strength of Fulham's that we did know in advance. But sometimes that's just how it goes.
I guess there's a couple of big questions coming out of it, Temps. One of them is always around perspective. On the one hand, we've lost 2 defeats in 11, going back to Man City in December. On the other hand, those 2 defeats have been Bournemouth, where we got hammered, and Fulham, where we probably should have got hammered. So how are you viewing it? Are you concerned, or are you taking a step back and saying, actually, we're in a good place, and 2 defeats in 11 is something we'd all have taken?
Yeah, and you have to look at the league table to know that we're in a good place. And the fact that Chelsea, Newcastle, one or two others have fallen off at points and really faltered. Then you have a glance and that all of a sudden replaced by Bournemouth. No one's going to allow us to grab this Champions League spot. We have to take it. And that is now going to require more than a couple of surprise results, wins against the head, call it what you will. We go to Newcastle with a very different perspective on that game. Now, home matches against Man City and Arsenal, where we need to impose ourselves on the game and score. So, of course, we're still in an excellent position. recent form has been erratic, to say the least. A 7-0 win sandwiched by 2 disappointing defeats. But I think the roadmap for me to be where we want to get to is that get to the back 4, have these 2 wingers starting. We didn't select Morato because he's better than anybody else. We didn't have the winger to replace Callum Hudson-Odoi with him not being able to play 90 minutes. And I think moving on from here, that's the formula that has made us dangerous, difficult to defend against, allowed us to make the best of the personnel that we have and deploy them in an effective way. That's what I want to see and what will give me confidence to get back to where we were. If Callum Hudson-Odoi finds himself out of the side, at least out of starting contention for another couple of games, I think it becomes more challenging for us. We really, really need to get back on the front foot.
Erratic's probably quite a good word, I would say, Pete. Isn't it? The last 3 games, I always want the gap between the ceiling and the floor to be quite small. For us, it's been quite up and down. So how are you feeling about it all?
Well, first of all, I'm delighted to hear that Temps is getting his roadmap out again, because last season that was a regular joy as we sort of fumbled our way towards staying up, and it was nice to have Temps' roadmap to keep us company along the way. So glad we've got that again, and hopefully it sees us on the right route to the right ending. Yeah, it's hard to say, isn't it? Because that is just 3 games, and it's not a massive pool of evidence to play with, but it is 3 mad games. I think you can sort of explain them all in different ways. The Bournemouth game, we were both the losses. We were incredibly poor, right? I don't think you could really pick anyone in the Forest team who had good games in either of those, apart from Sels against Fulham, I guess, and the odd sort of okay performance. But those are 2 examples of the whole team being miles off it. That for me is probably the biggest concern about those 2 defeats. The Brighton thing, I have never seen a team set up in a more bizarre way in a Premier League game, and I think it's hard to take an awful lot from that. Apart from that, we were ruthless and brilliant in being ruthless, as we often have been this season. So yeah, the 2 defeats, they worry me in the sense that I think it's slightly odd seeing so many poor performances from a team that has been so good as a unit. So that is a shame, but it is just 2 or 3 games that we're sort of analysing there. And I think, as Nuno says after the game, it's what we do next that counts, isn't it? And that's where you start to define the narrative over a course of games following these disappointments. So let's see where we go with it. On the sort of perspective question, I sort of wonder. I know there's been some issues with people in some quarters really reacting to this, but I sort of wonder how much your sort of expectations can have really changed, that you're furious after a 2-1 loss to an incredibly stable Premier League football team who themselves are going to be competing for Europe, have a coach that lots of clubs would like to steal, plenty of good players, and we end the game 3rd in the Premier League table. If the only way I can see and understand that you'd be sort of reeling about it is if you've already decided that we have to be a Champions League team come the end of the season, and I just don't think that's reasonable. This team is always going to have difficult moments. We're still punching well above our weight. The odds are against us. What we've done so far has been magnificent. We've had a couple of really, really difficult and slightly concerning games, but I don't think there's any reason to be overreacting at this point.
Pete, I think we've played our way into that expectation, haven't we? So, of course, the Champions League debate is crazy when you think about the things we were talking about 12 months ago and how we were going to gather together the points to survive. However, that is the expectation that has come about us watching Forest turn teams over week after week for that period either side of Christmas. So I think it is a reasonable expectation for us to have now to frame the results that we have in our battle to be in the top 5. This feels like a moment for us, an opportunity. I don't think we've got the depth to consistently trouble the top 5. However, the form, the group, the cohesion, the results that we've had to this point have put us in that conversation. So par for me now is trying to finish in the top 5, and the lens through which I'm assessing these games, I think we'd all be disappointed if we weren't. Of course, Nuno says the right things, 1 game at a time, won't mention the word Champions League. But internally, that's the belief and that's the drive that he's given the players every single day. And yeah, I'm probably pride myself on being a realist, but even I would be disappointed if we find ourselves falling just outside the top 6 off the back of days like Fulham where we couldn't lay a glove during the first half. So I've felt my expectation change, and I suspect that's the true story inside the club, inside the squad, inside the group as well.
Before we come on to looking then at the Newcastle game in more detail, we'll intersperse it with stuff from this game and around partly the changes Nuno might have made. I'm kind of informing that discussion, I think, is what Lewis said on the post-match show. So I've got a clip around how Fulham dominated the first half, and then I'll ask the chaps whether Nuno probably should have responded at half-time or if he was right to stick with the players having got back into the game. So this is 53 seconds of Lewis explaining how Fulham dominated the first half, if you haven't seen it already.
Fulham fullbacks went high, which allowed Toure and Iwobi to stay high, which then pinned back our wing-backs, which then had to make Anderson, if you've seen a lot of the time in the first half, Anderson and Gibbs White were playing as kind of right and left midfielder in terms of in a 4-4-2. And that's because they have to now go out and get that ball into the fullback. If you look at the left-hand side, because Robinson's so effective, it allowed Iwobi to come in and make an extra man with Smith Rowe in kind of that 2-10s. And that is where Danilo then gets isolated. And what they're trying to do, which again happened, is when they look and Danilo gets isolated, the only people that can come out of their slots is Murillo and Morata, and that's what then they try and do, and then look for them little gaps in behind. So I think from a tactical point of view, Fulham got it spot on.
That's Lewis talking about how Fulham got it spot on. Interestingly, talking about 2-10s, getting a player to drift off the wing. And Man City did that against us to great effect with Grealish. Fulham have done it. Brighton tried it, as Pete said, but did it in the most inexplicable way with no midfield behind them to back it up. So I wonder if teams are targeting that. The thing to me, Temps, is I felt he should have made a change at half-time because we were lucky to be in the game. I know people say you can't really criticise Nuno for doing so well. I think you can if it's talking about a game in isolation. You can always know, as we do, that Nuno's done a brilliant job. But for me, he should have made a change at half-time. Or what do you think?
Yeah, I'd have made the change at half-time. If Callum Hudson-Odoi is on our bench, he's got 45 minutes in him. And I think we all saw, with the benefit of hindsight, of course, that's when we're at our most dangerous. And we start pinning their fullbacks and we start imposing ourselves on the opposition. I think Lewis's analysis was interesting and absolutely spot on. How do they create space in the middle of the park, pin the wing-backs, make our wing-backs play as fullbacks? That releases their own fullbacks. It allows them to have overloads in central areas. And in Smith Rowe and Iwobi, they have two players who are very comfortable on the ball and very comfortable in a dynamic system where they can drift into pockets of space. So yeah, good insight from Lewis. I would have made the change at half time, and we saw, didn't we, that period of time post changing the system looked like a team transformed. And you just wonder what might have happened if that's how we'd have shot out of the blocks, because the way we've won games this season is to get ahead and stay ahead. We haven't contained teams first half. We've gone at them. We've had more 1-0 leads than any other team in the Premier League. And we at no point looked like the team that was going to take a 1-0 lead at Craven Cottage.
I think, Pete, the timing of the second goal is a bit unfortunate because it looks... Danilo comes off straight after, and it looks probably worse than it is because I think Hudson-Odoi is warming up to come on. And, if he comes on, Danilo's had an hour and we're saying, he's got a good hour in his belt. We're right in the game. So yeah, that is a bit unfortunate. But what are any thoughts you want to add to what Temps was saying there, just around changes, or are we hindsighting it too much?
No, we're not hindsighting it too much because that is the point of doing this, isn't it? And I think if that's how you felt at the time, then it's perfectly reasonable, isn't it? I think it's only a problem when after the game, if you've not actually thought any of those things, you start putting in place what would have been a perfect plan. I don't like doing the hindsight criticism much because we all thought Nuno's chosen team was a reasonable one, right? I don't think anyone disagreed with that. We were obviously miles off during that first half, but clearly there's a reason why he's picked the team the way he has. He would have had a plan. He knew. Those things that Lewis is talking about that was great analysis, but I don't think any of it's a massive surprise, and it wouldn't have been a massive surprise to Nuno as someone who watched them play a lot. So no doubt Nuno would have had confidence that the plan that he'd put in place had the sort of right attributes to overcome that. And it's much easier for us to say, right, just change it. Having said all that, at halftime, I was thinking, look, it just doesn't look like it's going to work. I think Hudson-Odoi is our best chance of getting back into this game, and Morato's, is having a pretty ineffectual time in that back three, and really, what's the point in sticking that way? So I would have made the 2 changes at halftime, which I did. Is what I said at the time. I thought, Hudson-Odoi on, and probably Dominguez for me. I think on for Danilo and Morato, and it looked like, seeing how the game played out, that was more of a problem for them. But it's also really hard to make all these judgments because game state changes so much, doesn't it, after a goal? And suddenly you've got a Fulham team that aren't impacting in the same way that they were. The game was a lot more open. They were willing to let us come onto them much more. So it's incredibly hard to say. Personally, I would have made those changes. I'd have gone 4-2-3-1 and tried to get Hudson-Odoi running at them. Because we've talked about this so many times, but I just think he brings so much to the team. He's one of our main threats. He links up perfectly with those players around him, and they just know so well that sort of that trio behind Wood with Anderson coming and linking up as well. It's a special thing that we've got going on there. So I want them on the pitch if we possibly can. And Hudson-Odoi also brings you that bit of control and the sort of clarity on the ball, and he doesn't lose it often. So he's not a big risk, I don't think. So that is what I would have done. I'm very wary about being like too hindsighty or too critical because ultimately I haven't got a clue compared to Nuno, and I'm sure he had good reasons for it. But yeah, well, I would have made the changes.
Very good. We'll come to the goals shortly. Just before we do that, a word for Trent Navigation. There are loads of events coming up, as mentioned. One of those is the Rumble Band, one of the UK's top soul, Motown and Northern Soul. 13-piece live band. They're playing at the Big Shed as part of their 40th anniversary celebrations. This is on Saturday, the 26th of July. There's outdoor bars, the range of cask ales available, barbecue, food courts, and in the pizza kitchen as well, which is all outside. Get your tickets from giganticdrop.com. Just search Trent Navigation or Big Shed, and they shall be there for you. Right, let's get into the goals conceded. Probably might as well bunch them together, Tem. So we're sort of similar in terms of, crosses into our box, can't really can defend them. A few players are going to be disappointed, aren't they? I mean, the first goal, I guess it's Morato and Aina not really, I don't know, communicating, not filling the space. It looks really bad when a number 10 goes in and heads it in like that, doesn't it?
It's a great ball, but it's a ball to Emil Smith-Rowe, who's a tidy number 10 that has scored very different types of goals throughout his career, but never like that. He shouldn't be ghosting between 2 Premier League defenders in the manner that he did. Morata's starting position is wrong. He's the inside man, so I think he's the marker, and just finds himself 2 yards inside the ball. It evades him, and then it's well taken by Smith-Rowe. Could there have been a bit more pressure on the cross? Maybe, but I'm crediting Traore. He looked a threat throughout. I think he occupied his defender constantly, as Lewis said, and he put the ball in the perfect position for Smith-Rowe to score. It's disappointing because the hallmark of this team has been stop the cross or win the cross, and we've been consistently strong at aerially cutting things out the near post, at disrupting the crosser, and that wasn't in evidence, was it, for the goals? So it's the first one that particularly disappointed me. And I think if he had his time again, Morata would get his starting position that bit more accurate and cut that one out.
Yeah, Nico didn't have a good first half. I thought he was better second half. He got tighter to him, but first half, Traore gave him the run around a bit. The second goal, Pete. I mean, Lukic, who I thought had a really good game, got a shot away where he beat Danilo, and then the corner, Jimenez runs off Danilo, and then Wood and Aina, I don't know, they're going to be disappointed as well, aren't they, I guess, in their part?
I think so. I mean, that second goal is an example of the sort of slightly creeping issue that we may have, in that we've had real success in manning that sort of central area at set pieces with our sort of impactful players and aerial duels and whatever. And I think teams have found it hard to have much success against us because, as Tim said, we've been really good at competing and getting the ball away. But now I think there's a creeping sense that if you can find an opportunity at the front or the back post away from that sort of little phalanx of our best attackers of the ball, that seems to be a way to hurt us. And I mean, it's worth saying, isn't it? Just like with the first goal, I mean, that's a properly brilliant ball from Traore, who I guess had, you know, as good a game as, you know, you'll see him have. Really, he was absolutely on fire. Similarly, there's a lot of quality in it as well, isn't there? I mean, Jimenez does so well to win that ball and to flick it. I don't think Danilo probably doesn't cover himself in glory, but really, what are you expecting from Danilo there? He's not somebody who you can like realistically expect to have a massive impact in that moment. He doesn't have that sort of strength and that aerial command, and I guess that's one of the downsides of having him in the team. You see what the positives of having someone like him in the team are, and progressive passing and such like, and turning defence into attack really quickly. But, you know, if you had a Ryan Yates in that moment instead of Danilo, then you probably have a different outcome. But you can't have it all, I guess. As you say, again, it's all just felt a bit hesitant, just a bit off the pace, didn't it? So the back post again, we're just very slow to impact at the moment. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh, I'm not sure, but it all just feels a bit flat-footed, a little bit off the pace, and both the sort of attacking the first ball and the second moment at the back post. And I think that's just sort of symptomatic of where we were across the pitch all game, really.
Yeah, Aina, flat-footed feels like a good description of Aina. For some reason, he dropped a poor game out of nowhere. Not out of nowhere, because he wasn't great against Bournemouth, but generally he's been so good for us. So, yeah, that was a surprise. We'll talk about Danilo on midfield, obviously, because it's a big area discussion, but we can't not mention Chris Wood's goal attempts. I don't know what we can say about him. I mean, he's got 18 goals. He's not quite maybe he is a realistic contender for the Golden Boot. I don't know. Is he? What do you think? Salah's on 23, by the way.
It's chance conversion, isn't it? What he's done in a team where he hasn't had loads to miss is truly remarkable. His shot accuracy and his conversion rate from shots to goals is higher than Haaland and Salah's. And there's a good example as to exactly why. Wasn't a chance that we created. It's bounced off the centre half's heel. He's taken a really good touch inside, and then he's tried to find the corner. It came off the defender's chest, wasn't it? It was deflected, and therefore a somewhat lucky goal on this occasion. But it's one he's pulled out of nowhere. And if that was the only sniff he had in the first half, and he converted it. And credit to Chris Wood, underrated. You have to watch him to truly appreciate what he is. I think he's probably been dismissed when he's walked through the door by the wider fan base as a bit of a squad player, whatever else, a bit of a target man, one trick pony, whatever. It's just not the case, and that was exactly summarised with that first half impact on Saturday. Very little came his way. When it did, he converted and pulled us back into a game that we were on the ropes, weren't we, for 45 minutes there. There was barely a sniff. So absolute credit to Chris Wood. He's done it again.
He's properly ridiculous. The numbers that he's putting in terms of the conversion and everything, and this is like historic stuff. It's mad. And he's playing so well that I'm almost going to start believing that touches like that, little one off his heel, is some sort of crazy Ibrahimovic intended touch, the way he's playing at the moment. You know, it's just, what an absolute pleasure it's been to watch him. And I've said this before, but the thing I love most about it is he just keeps doing stuff that I had no idea he had in his locker. You know, and he's ice cool, isn't he, as well? You know, you get that moment is nothing really for a lot of players, and for him it's just this unbelievable presence of mind just to craft out the perfect moment for himself in any situation like that. It's just absolutely first class.
Just looking for conversion rates, I think it's 38% of his shots end up in goal in the net, which is ridiculous. 60% on target. So yeah, it's extraordinarily good. I think it might be the third highest in Premier League history, apparently. But I'll check that out. Yeah, that sounds about right, certainly. So yeah, can't have any complaints about him at all. Also, just a word on Matz Sels' temps before we probably move away from the game a little bit. I mean, is he the best keeper in the Premier League right now?
Well, that's a massive statement. Is he the best keeper in the Premier League? I think if a big European side was looking to nick someone, they'd take one of the Brazilians at Man City or Liverpool, right? But on form and on the impact he's had for his club, Matz Sels has to be up there. He's the busiest keeper, obviously. There are games that Liverpool play where one of us three could stand there and do very little beyond take goal kicks. So I think Matz Sels has to be given some kind of multiplier for being in an aspirational team that has improved immeasurably, and he's had a direct impact on that points tally. There are times when he's won points for us. There are times where he's helped us defender hold on for a point. This was about keeping the score below 5 and 6, frankly, on Saturday. And yeah, the notable instances weren't there where he saved that scoreline from becoming a bit of an embarrassment and a reflection on the performance of the two sides. We should credit Fulham. They've always done well against us. That game at the City Ground where Morgan Gibbs-White ran riot and we were cruising by half time isn't the norm. The Cottage is a tough place to go. It's unique in Premier League football. It's not intimidating. It's the opposite of a nasty fan base. It's actually really nice, isn't it, to share that space behind the away end and find yourself having a beer with Fulham fans at half time. But we should credit them in this. I think they did the research and did a job on us. And as you said, Matz Sels kept the score down.
Where would you rank him, Pete? Right now, just on current form, if you were ranking Premier League goalies off the top of your head, where would you be?
Well, I think his case is slightly odd in that he's performing as well as any keeper in the league this season right now. So if the question is sort of form-wise, who's the best, then I think you're struggling to look past him as the goalkeeper is in your team of the season. Having said that, there are sort of limits to his game. I think he's been so good for us, like a remarkable shot stopper. Consistency now is crazy. The consistency, I think, is the really impressive thing about him. But I think it's worth bearing in mind that I don't think the biggest clubs would necessarily be that content with a goalkeeper who is pretty rooted to his line. He's not the most commanding in the box, and those are probably the sort of things that might stop him getting that sort of step up move, perhaps. But I think form-wise, you're struggling to find a better keeper in the league, and he has been just brilliant, so consistent.
Just dipping into the chat, there was something I saw from Lee, and I've lost it. It was about where Wood is. Oh yeah, how many goals has he got? He has got 87 Premier League goals, which puts him level with Rashford and Dennis Bergkamp. There are two strikers on 88. Do either of you know who they are? If I give you a punt, they're both English. One plays currently, and one finished in about 2010.
I know that Football Ramble did a quiz on this not so long ago. I think very recently, actually. Is the one current playing maybe Danny Ings?
No.
He's definitely 80 to 100.
He might
Kevin Davies is one of them.
Kevin Davies is one of them. Very good. And then the other one is Callum Wilson. They're on 88. And after that, it's Olivier Giroud on 90, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer on 91, and James Beattie is on 91 as well. And then I've got so few players have got 100 goals. It's only 34 players who've got 100 goals in the Premier League. So, yeah, incredible company. Right, let's look ahead a little bit to Newcastle and more generally. And there's two questions, really, I wanted to ask the lads. And one leads into the other one. One's around formations and what we do at Newcastle. Temps, are you 100% then that you go back to a back four and sacrifice Morato? Is that what you definitely do?
If Callum Hudson-Odoi can start. So I think that the sense in a squad of true depth, all positions covered, we would persevere with the 4-2-3-1 and replace Callum Hudson-Odoi with another winger. But the drop off to our backup wingers is so severe that we choose to build a different system that frees Nico Williams and Ola Reina, two of the better attacking fullbacks / wingbacks in the Premier League. So I think we can't be defensive at this point. We're not trying to avoid relegation. We're trying to grab points, and that means scoring goals on the road. And we're a more dangerous team. Our opposition has to react more, do more when we play both those wingers. But we're not going to play 4-2-3-1 if it means starting Silva or Sosa in the Premier League at this point. So he's got a couple of things he could do. He could potentially stick Morgan Gibbs-White out there. We've seen the experiment where Dominguez becomes like a pressing winger and we retain that kind of formation. But I think we're at our best on the front foot, 4-2-3-1, Callum Hudson-Odoi starting. And I'd probably go so far to say that I would seek to start another player from that central midfield bank if we find ourselves unable to start Callum Hudson-Odoi and don't want to trust Sosa or Silva. So, yes, for me, it's 4-2-3-1 at Newcastle. And I think we need to go into these away games looking to score.
Yeah, I think Dominguez isn't a bad shout at all, playing from the right in a game like that. Also, as random pieces here. Sosa, I was surprised Sosa wasn't brought on ahead of Silva, considering we were chasing the game and Silva's not done too much. Although he did score against Brighton, didn't he, when he came off the bench, and he did well. So maybe that's a bit too much recency bias for me. I don't know. Same question to you, Pete. Are you playing a back four against Newcastle definitely, or do you see merit in a 3 still?
I'd play the 4-2-3-1 regardless of whether Hudson-Odoi is available. Personally, I think we'll need to inject some energy into the central midfield areas, and I think that means either Dominguez or Yates has to start rather than Danilo. As my sort of reading of it goes, Newcastle will press hard. They will swarm around us, and Danilo looks a little bit rusty in those moments, doesn't he? Where he's got bodies around him and he can give the ball away potentially. I think that could be pretty disastrous if we do that. There is a high upside in that he's got the passing ability to overcome that press, but I think it's too much of a risk. So as things stand, I think I'd go Dominguez in and Hudson-Odoi wide left if he's fit. If he's not, I'd go Dominguez in one of the wide roles and Yates in as well. I think the other key part of it for me is that Newcastle are going to set up with a pretty high line. They're going to look to be pretty front foot and they're going to leave us space. I think the key thing then is that we get Gibbs White back into that pocket because you see how all of those counter-attack goals come. We win the ball, it goes to Gibbs White quickly, we drive, and he's able to release a Hudson-Odoi or an Elanga, and it's much harder for him, I think, in the sort of deeper role that he will find himself in if we play the 3 at the back, for him to stick in that spot. That's the sort of trigger for us. That's how we get our opportunities. And against a team like Newcastle with such a high line, those opportunities are going to be how we win the game. So Gibbs White needs to be in that 10 role for me. So that's what I'd do. I think there's potential sense to Dominguez or even Anderson operating in one of those wide roles regardless. But I'd like to think that we've got enough about us against the Newcastle team that have faltered a bit and have got a couple of injuries and such like, or unavailability, that we can go with our sort of strongest 11. Hope that the centre mids can do enough of a job, because we did struggle with Newcastle operating with a lot of bodies in those central areas last time. But hopefully we can do enough in there, and that Gibbs White is able to help out. That we're not going to be at too much risk, but I think we can threaten. I think we can make an impact with our best 11.
Yeah, I mean Newcastle, Joel Linton's out, and he's a big player for them. They have that. They're a physically strong team in midfield. They have just lost 4-0, and it sounds like they played pretty horrifically against Man City. I watched that game more for our preview on Thursday, so they've obviously got issues as well. The question that Pete discussed there, Temps, was the other one around central midfield. What you do if Hudson-Odoi's fit, especially, and you can't play Dominguez as a winger. Do you stick with Danilo because we know what the ceiling is with him, but we also know what the floor is? Or do you go for the conservative option and safe option of Yates, I think, where you know what you're going to get, where he's probably not got the ceiling? Then there's Dominguez, who's probably getting a bit fed up with being on the bench, and Sangare as well, who did well against Exeter, probably did less well against Fulham, and is coming back from injury. Who would get the edge for you there?
I think it's less likely that Danilo starts at Newcastle. I think when we go into a game like Brighton at home, where we want to be attacking and dynamic, and there's less need to anchor it, he does have more all-round ability than Yates and Dominguez. But that nuisance, that hounding, that aggression is required at games like Newcastle away. So I do expect to see either Dominguez or Ryan Yates getting the start on a horses for courses basis. You can make a case for Sangare as well. It'd be a bit of a leap for him to be starting a Premier League game, but the best of him, the interceptions, the hounding, the dynamism puts him in that mix as well. So I think we're going to see starts for Anderson and Gibbs-White. I don't think we're going to see Danilo, and the beneficiary of that is going to be 1 from 3. And then it's a bit of a risk-reward thing for Nuno. He could stick Yates in there and know he's going to stick himself to whatever central midfield playmaker emerges on the day and chase him around for 75, 80 minutes. He could take the slightly more dynamic option of having Sangare there, or the absolute precision and endeavour and organisation of Nico Dominguez. So I think the single biggest decision that Nuno has to make this week is to select between those 3. What do you think, Pete?
Yeah, the only thing I'm sure about is that it's too much of a risk to play Danilo in that role, and I think it's definitely too much of a risk to play Sangare personally. I think we saw some of the things that he's capable of in the Exeter game, right? But it's the absolute opposite of that, because he's not going to have any space. Newcastle's about as bad a team as he could face as a sort of rusty footballer in this moment. I think he'll be pressed hard. He'll face energetic, battling central midfielders who will be all over him, and I think that's asking far too much. I can see the real benefits for both Yates and Dominguez. I think they both bring strengths that we probably need in the game. I think if we're only playing one of them in that central midfield role, I'd plump for Dominguez. If you have a look at his stats, his defensive stats are still as good as anyone in the Premier League, even though I think he's had a little bit of a dip the last few games he's appeared in. And when we were at our absolute best and on that run, I think he was a big part of it. And I think if we can get back to that, that's probably where I'd go. So I think I'd plump for Dominguez if we're just playing one of them.
I think I've not looked at midfield pairings and how well we've done with Anderson and Dominguez together, whether we've won games or not, or how much they played. I think Dominguez would be my pick. I think Nuno might well end up going back to Yates, because I think it often comes down to trust and how many players Nuno really trusts. And I think we're starting to see there's probably only about 14 players that he really, really buys into, I think, the way he's bringing subs on. And I know Yates hasn't come on lately, but I think he might retreat to him. But I think Dominguez would be my pick. And the thing we're always in danger of as fans as well is the guy who's not in the team is the one who's the best player for it. And I still wouldn't pick Danilo, but I think he's got a big role to play, but not for this one, a physical game where they're going to get after you. If Sangare had more minutes, then I might lean towards him, but he's not played much, and we question whether he can live with the pace of the Premier League. He's not played 90 minutes since August, so he wouldn't be the one for me. So I would probably go Dominguez, but I think Nuno might go Yates. So yeah. Any final thoughts on that from either of you before we move on? Nope.
No. Let's hope he has got that conundrum and we can start the wingers. I think that's the key for us imposing ourselves on this game. Obviously, another Chris Wood hat-trick could be welcome. But yeah, if we can find a way to start those two, the pieces will fall into place.
Yeah, Sangare did play very well at Newcastle last season, I know. But again, he hasn't played many minutes to do that. I think Temps is right as well. Hudson-Odoi is key. If Hudson-Odoi is out, then I'd play Dominguez as a winger or a wide option, and then you bring Yates in for me. That's how I would do it. Right, before we move on, just to look finally at these next 3 games as a bracket, just a quick word for Global Telemetrics. Here is a 35-second video for you to enjoy. So if you're listening, not watching, that was an explainer that motorhomes and caravans were in the top 10 most stolen vehicles last year as well. So you can secure those, not have your holiday ruined. So do check out the link in the description. Right, next 3 games, we know what they are: Newcastle, Arsenal, City. How are you feeling about them, Pete? Relishing them, fearing them? How are you viewing them?
Sorry, I'm just struggling not to laugh at the comments of all the people whose ears have been blowing out their eardrums and are now deceased.
Was that loud? It was fine for me.
It was so loud.
Oh, sorry.
It was a bit of a change of tone as well from the Global Telemetrics lads, wasn't it? No sort of black-clad hoodlum. Just a nice sort of camping and caravanning scene.
Well, before Pete answers that, I will apologise. I thought that was okay. It was okay in my ears, but my wife says I need to get my ears sorted because I either ignore her or don't hear her, one or the other.
Well, you've been listening to a lot of these ads, haven't you? So you haven't got any
Yeah. Listening to headphones every day for a year is probably what's ruining my hearing. Yeah. Right. Sorry, Pete. These 3 games that are coming up.
Relish them. Absolutely relish them. Why would we? I just don't understand why we would fear them. This is all opportunity for us. It's all upside. It's so different to where we've been for a quarter of a century. This is all, I mean, if you can't be optimistic about this stuff, given what we've achieved so far this season, then God help you. No fear for me whatsoever. I also think it's we lost all of these games in the reverse fixtures, right? And I think I really don't expect that to happen. I think there are opportunities in all of them for us to get a point or even more. So I think we'll come out at the end of the 3 games up on what we had first time round, and that's a pretty good place to be, even if we end up slipping a place or 2 in the table, because they obviously are really tough fixtures. I think certainly you look at Newcastle and Arsenal, and Newcastle and City, and you know that there are going to be chances for us if we're at our best, right? Those are both teams who are going to be high up the pitch. They're going to be assertive, and they're going to give us moments. And they've got defenses that are pretty iffy in places. And when you look at Arsenal, they're not the force that they can be, because their first choice front 3 are unavailable and likely to still be, presumably. So I think there's plenty of positives to take in all of those games. I'm not feeling any fear as far as I'm concerned. It's one game at a time to write a bit of history, and it's all upside and opportunity for me.
Let me add some context, by the way, before Temps answers. He referenced there about returning corresponding fixtures. We're currently 1 point ahead of where we were in the corresponding fixtures that we played so far against the other teams. So, we beat Wolves when we drew with them and that kind of stuff, and we lost to Bournemouth. So we're a point ahead of where we were. Just around the teams around us and their upcoming games and how they're shaping up as well. Arsenal next 3 are West Ham, Forest, obviously, and Man United. Bournemouth have got a great run actually until May, where you could see them winning just about every game. Not that they will, but their next 3 are Wolves, Brighton, and Tottenham, which is probably as tricky as it gets for them, actually. Chelsea, who are really wobbling, but they've got some good games coming up. Villa away, then Southampton and Leicester at home. Newcastle have got us, obviously, Liverpool away, West Ham away, and City have got Liverpool home, Spurs away, and us. So it feels like a time, Temps, where a lot of teams have got tricky games, apart from probably Bournemouth and Chelsea, but the other ones up there are in a testing moment as well. So how are you feeling about these games?
I think these are the 3 hardest games we'll have for the rest of the season. I think if we come out with something in the region of even 4 to 5 points from these 3, we can then look forward to more favourable fixtures in the run-in. There's far less to fear in our last 10 games than there is in the next few weeks. We come out of this run into Ipswich and Man United. So it's about getting through intact, being in a position to strike as we come to the run-in. But look, these are intimidating games. Newcastle are they're an improving team, but they're erratic, right? All results possible there. We know what Arsenal and Man City bring. Probably the second and third best squads in the Premier League, if we're being objective. Arsenal have been good and lucky recently. They've managed to grind out results even when they've found struggles in games. Leicester pushed them close, and then they just cruised through in that last 10 minutes and blew them away. Man City can be whatever they want to be. They've got the deadliest archetypal centre forward in the league, and all kinds of options in central midfield. So I'm very wary of these 3 games, but I think we've got the fixtures to get to where we need to be. And if we're still in the top 4 after this run of 3, our prospects become even brighter.
Yeah, I think if we're in the top 5 after these 3 games, then I'd be pretty confident that we'll make it into the Champions League personally. I mean, 3 points is really good return, I think, for me. And even if we lose all 3, we can still definitely do it. It's just going to be tough, but I don't think there's any need to panic, certainly. Right, I think that covers everything I want to cover today. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to add, Pete Blackburn?
No, nothing at all from me. Enjoyed chatting and doing a bit of therapy. It's always nice after a loss, have a bit of catharsis. Oh, the only thing I'd like to say actually is thank you to everyone who contributed to the Greg Mitchell's fundraiser for his mate Sam, because it's been an extraordinary uptake since Greg mentioned on Saturday that it was his birthday and he'd like donations if anyone could afford it. I think it was around £4,000 when I went on and sent a little donation, and a couple of hours later it was up to 10 grand. So fantastic stuff, and an awful lot of generosity out there. So I'm sure Greg will be very grateful, and it was really, really moving for me to see as well.
It's on 11,500 this morning. I did have a quick look, so I was going to mention that as well. So yeah, thank you very much to everyone for that. Temps, anything from you?
I just love a win. I just think that football is so much more than we've lost, it's terrible, we've won, it's great. But there are obviously some mood swings, both in this podcast and in the comment section and amongst the Forest Twitter following and everything else. But why can't we go to Newcastle and win? We weren't given a prayer in this game last year, and it was one of the most remarkable performances and results that I can recall. There's no reason why we can't spring a surprise, and it wouldn't be that much of a surprise, but it'll just get that belief back, that connection, that buy-in between fans, players, management. So yeah, let's go to Newcastle and do them.
I think we'll explore this more on Thursday, but that is, it wouldn't be. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we lost. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if we won. I mean, they lost, 4-0 in their last game. They lost at home as well in their last home game to Fulham. The other home game before that, they lost 4-1 at home to Bournemouth, who we know are very good. So, they're not bulletproof by a long shot. So we can definitely go there and win. But, equally, you have to respect how good they are as well. So exciting times regardless. Just a couple of quick things from me. Shout out for Forest women who drew 1-1 with Wolves yesterday in a top of the table game. It means they're still 3 points clear. Forest are at the top of the league. It's all very close there with Burnley in the mix as well. But well done to them. And Sam Perkins from Memorial Fund was the other thing I was going to mention. So that covers everything. If you have enjoyed this, do us a favour, hit like, hit subscribe. Do consider channel membership or Patreon or a 5-star review on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Do just hit like on the video, though, if you haven't already, because I've been terrible at plugging that. But it's good to have 350 people with us off the back of a defeat. We shall be back. It's half term, so nothing tomorrow, but we'll be back on Wednesday with John Bruin, who writes for The Guardian and is often on Football Weekly. And I think Charlie Slater as well, who I tapped up at Temps' birthday party on Saturday. Always networking. That's what Temps has taught me, listening in. So we'll do that then. Pete Blackburn, thanks very much.
Thanks very much. Enjoyed it.
Michael Temple, thank you very much for Saturday night as well. I enjoyed that.
No problem, mate. I hope Chaz has done some research because he was at Middlesbrough on Saturday and he's watched Notts County for 12 years. So get your Forest DVDs out, Charlie.
He was at Middlesbrough and then he was straight to your party. And then I think where is he on Tuesday night? I think he's at Leeds or something on Tuesday night. And then, hopefully he's going to join us on Wednesday. So he's
a struggling Man U fan, mate. So you can bash him for that.
I know. It'll be fun. Right. Thanks for everyone's company. Thanks for their patience as well with the late start. If you want to direct any correspondence, send it to Temps, not to me. In the meantime, have a good couple of days and we shall see you soon.